Hey everybody, it's me and Buster Green, and today I saw a very cool movie called Bullet Train Explosion. A movie by ex-Skynex storyboarder god Shinji Higuchi, aka Shinji Kakari, aka the Gooch, you know, that guy who made Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman. And it's a very important movie because this is the first movie he's directed since Shin Ultraman. And in many ways, it feels like a direct continuation of Shin Godzilla, at least in terms of it uses a lot of the same tropes that Shin Godzilla used, even more than Shin Ultraman used them, which was actually really interesting to me. What's also really interesting about this movie is that it's a sequel to a very obscure but well-regarded Sony Chiba movie from the 1970s called Bullet Train, not to be confused with the recent movie called Bullet Train, which was also okay. Anyway, the movie is very intriguingly self-aware of that film's weird cult status and the fact that that film is kind of lost media. Anyway, because of the novelty that Netflix gave this movie a complete global launch on Wednesday, April 23rd, releasing it dubbed in America at the exact same time they released it subbed in Japan, and out of general respect for Shinji Higuchi, who I met once and who has done a lot of cool things lately, I decided to watch this one right away. You know, as I look over Shinji Higuchi's filmography, it occurs to me that while Anno seems to have lately been on a big kick of I'm trying to direct remakes of all my favorite pop culture things ever, Higuchi seems to have settled into a similar but different comfort space, whereas his goal is to remake all the most important films that he loved as a child. So he did Japan Sinks, The Great Kanto Earthquake, Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, and now here we are at Bullet Train Explosion. Now, I've never seen the original 1970s Bullet Train. I basically have no knowledge of it, but here's some important things I found out about it today for this review. This original movie was called Bullet Train. It came out in 1975, and it consisted of a train that had a bomb in it that would explode if the train went below 80 kilometers per hour, about 50 miles per hour for Americans. Now, if that premise sounds at all familiar to you, it's that because in the 1990s, there was a Keanu Reeves movie called Speed that wholeheartedly stole this concept and completely ripped it off, but put it on a bus. There was also a sequel to that called Speed 2 that put it on a hilarious cruise ship. Now, as for that original movie, Bullet Train, it starred Sony Chiba, and it apparently has only released in America one time as an obscure DVD bulk pack collecting a bunch of random Sony Chiba movies, and so that only came out once in 2004, and aside from that, the original movie has never been properly released in the US at all. So it's a very hard to find movie because it's a movie from 50 years ago. It's a movie that almost no one knows about. It's basically an impossible to find movie in the US. Japan has a lot of cool movies in the 70s that I want to see, but unfortunately they're basically lost or extremely difficult to obtain in modern day America, especially as we keep closing our borders, because there's no American interest in finding these old movies, nor is there an interest in Japan in reprinting them. Now, if I could watch this movie today, I actually would. I absolutely would, because seeing this new movie really makes me want to see the old movie. And Shinji Higuchi has basically sold me that he loved this original movie so much. That's why he made the new one. He made it sound pretty amazing. Now, I think that being said, our boy Shinji was self-aware of how obscure and how rare this original movie is. So this new remake has been made almost consciously self-aware of the fact that few people have seen the original movie, but nonetheless, this movie is a sequel to that movie. But it kind of works on that. It works with the knowledge that they're making the sequel to a movie that no one has ever seen, and they play that up. Pretty much the genius thing about this movie was marketed as just a remake of Bullet Train, but since no one had ever seen Bullet Train, it's actually not a remake, it's a secret self-sequel. So here's the first thing that cued me off it was a sequel. The Japanese Bullet Train, the real one, is very famous for the fact that it has never had a single problem. It has had a perfect performance record, and that perfect performance record is entirely chalked up to Japanese train engineers who have run it perfectly for the past 50 years without making a single mistake ever. And this is strictly attributed to just the engineers, not the trains and not the technology, because the technology was given to China, and China unfortunately crashed the same bullet trains that had the same technology. There was also a very famous Chinese train crash a long time ago where the Chinese government tried to dismantle and destroy the train without checking for survivors, so there were still injured people alive inside the train while they were ripping it apart and sending it to the junkyard in shreds. China problems aside, I'm far more critical of the fact that in America, We still don't have high-speed trains, even though bullet train technology has been a thing since 1964. And while Asia and Europe have built hundreds of them, America hasn't built a single one. Anyway, back to the movie and not me being mad about trains. So as I was trying to say, the Japanese bullet train company has a flawless record. But I immediately started realizing that this was a sequel to the other bullet train movie because they start referencing the events of the other movie and what happened in the 70s and how no one really remembers what happened because no one's seen that movie. Essentially, what's going on in this movie is that the bomber who puts the bomb on this train is a copycat criminal of the bomber from the 1975 movie. So in a very Shin Godzilla way, we get a very nice overview of all the different people who work at the Eastern JR Railroad Company, keeping the various Shinkansens going and making sure they don't crash into each other. I was also kind of impressed that as they go over all this hard science, they reveal that the Japanese Shinkansen runs on a variety of technology from the 1960s that hasn't been updated, a variety of modern Apple iMacs, and a variety of people straight up doing numbers on paper with fucking abacuses. It's insane. So anyway, the bomb gets declared, and the mad bomber reveals himself with a voice changer, and he's like, "You have to keep the train above 120 kilometers per hour, relatively 60 miles in America, or it goes boom." Actually, I wasn't sure of the exact number. Was it 120 or 100? 100 was a nice even number. They definitely got it down to 105 at one point, so maybe it was 100. Anyway, I feel like the information was not conveyed clearly, so I'm actually not sure what the actual speed limit was on the train where it had to stay above to not explode. I think it was 100. But the first time I watched this movie, because it was dubbed badly, I actually thought the number was a lot lower. Anyway, apparently the actual JR East train company actually collaborated on this movie, so it's a little bit propaganda for the company, but I actually like it because overall it does feel like they got some real train science and real train engineering in here, because I'm sure they had real train engineers vetting and canceling out the bullshit on the script and being this is how we would actually do it if we had to do it. So anyway, the train is traveling from Aomori Station, literally the furthest northest point in mainland Japan, to Tokyo. There's about 200 people on the train, and if the train slows below 100 kilometers per hour, 60 miles per hour, it goes boom. Now, you get a couple of wacky personalities on the train, but ultimately only a few of them really get enough screen time to stand out. We have smarmy YouTuber A, who is just your typical enough, popular enough a-hole YouTuber. I've seen YouTubers like this. I don't know, if anything, I can maybe compare him to Sora the Troll. He's Sora the Troll, go figure. Then we have Republican female governor, who is ultimately just not that cool of a character because she's totally manipulating the situation to her advantage to help her from getting elected. And she also doesn't do anything heroic aside from staying on the train when everyone else evacuates. Otherwise, she's a very, very questionable character. Then there were a second less important group of YouTubers. I forget what their deal was. They all had dyed hair. I think they were in a helicopter accident or something. They really didn't explain them well. And lastly, I want to say the last 150 people on the train were an entire high school class who just happened to be on a field trip taking the train that day. And guess what? All these people are suspects for being the Mad Bomber, but they don't super play up that angle in a way that I feel like an American mystery movie would, but nonetheless, they are all suspects. Oh, and I might as well spoil it now. A popular a-hole YouTuber only really has one good story on the train. So essentially what happens is when the bomber takes over the train, the government of Japan refuses to play ball with them because, if they pay this ransom, then there's no reason they're not going to blow up another train tomorrow. So then after that, most of the movie is actually a rescue movie where they just do the math of how they're going to get these people off the train. And then they're just going to let the train explode when there's no people on it. So that puts the bomber into checkmate. But the twist here, though, is that anyway, the Mad Bomber asked for 100 billion yen, I think. That's the equivalent of $100 million. The train company can't pay that, so the train bomber then asked that the ransom be paid by every single person in Japan, with the logic here is that if every person paid the ransom, the cost per person would be $10. So paying the ransom should actually be easy, but I'm not sure if the bomber's math includes children with no income and homeless people or anything. But anyway, so The government is still at an absolutely we don't negotiate with terrorists stance. So a-hole YouTuber steps in. A-hole YouTuber puts together this big plan that he's going to make a GoFundMe, and he does, and then he encourages all his millions of followers to pay the ransom. Now, this is really interesting because I don't think you can use a GoFundMe to pay a ransom, but it's a movie and it's set in Japan, and there's enough leeway here that I'll suspend my disbelief here. Anyway, overall, this ends up being kind of your average B-rate disaster movie. It's weird because it starts off very much like Shin Godzilla, but it unfortunately never reaches the heights of Shin Godzilla. And that unfortunately just makes it less than a B-rank movie, more of a C-rank movie. Like, the big problems with this movie is there's just fundamentally no main character, and there's no real character I can really root for. Like, the smarmy YouTuber is almost the main character, but really only in the middle of the movie where he has that one plot line about making the GoFundMe. The train's female pilot seems like she should be the main character of the movie, but she really only has screen time at the start and end of the movie, and it seems like ultimately she just sat in a chair pushing buttons and didn't actually make any important decisions. Arguably, the Mad Bomber gets a ton of screen time of the film, making them almost the main character, but the film also doesn't really focus on the bomber until the climax either, so ultimately there's a lot of characters in this movie, and none of them really have enough screen time. I guess you could say the train is the main character, but the train isn't a character, it's just a train and it just goes in a straight line and gets wrecked up a little. I will praise Higuchi's excellent choice of picking the H5 Shinkansen Hayabusa as the train to be featured in this movie. Quite frankly, I think it's the best train Japan has. It has this awesome green, white, and pink color scheme. It's got a giant rocket nose. I've seen a lot of different Japanese trains, and I do really think this is the best possible choice he could have made here. It's kind of the most photogenic and most iconic Japanese bullet train, so good job, Shinji Higuchi. You really did pick the best train. Anyway, so like Shin Godzilla, we see a lot of different government officials and different offices making different plans to divert and stop the train, but none of them ever really get named or focused on. We never have that rando Yaguchi step-up moment where they suddenly become heroes, who made a difference. It feels like everyone just did their job and it showed what all the jobs were. It feels even more awkward, and it feels like the movie wanted to have a hero, but it never did. It just showed that everyone's a hero because everyone helped. The other thing I want to criticize about the film is it's weird. Right before the film hits its climax, I want to say 65% of the film, it hits this weird kind of bathroom break moment. Why don't you go microwave your popcorn moment? I'm not even sure how to describe it, but the sun sets on the train and everyone just stops doing anything interesting. Half the characters fall asleep. It's if you want to take a sleep break, this is where you should do it. I wonder if that's a callback to the original film, because I have seen a lot of films from the Showa era that have a weak third act like that and do that kind of thing before. Anyway, I think that's about as far as I can get without going hard into spoilers on this movie. So here comes the spoiler section. If you're still trying to solve the mystery of the movie about who put this bomb on this train and why, which is half the fun of watching it, turn off this review, go watch the movie, and come back. Okay, so like I said, this film is trying to be a mystery, but it's a mystery that's not really that engaging. In fact, I would say the film is actively unengaged with the fact it's a mystery, even though it hands you all the evidence and it hands you all the clues and it hands you a room full of culprits that all seem like they could be the Mad Bomber. After the big train rescue, they take 90% of the passengers off the train, and there's only 10 people left who didn't make it onto the rescue train. And by sheer idiocy, of course, one of these people is the culprit, because for whatever reason, the Mad Bomber didn't want to escape the train and get away with it. Okay, yeah, so here's the big reveal. Randomly, one of the high school girls from the high school class that was on the field trip stays on a train, and surprise, surprise, against all logic, she is the Mad Bomber. Her big deal is apparently that her dad was a cop. Specifically, he's a random extra cop from the original movie who caught the original Mad Bomber. And then he, after that, abused his daughter for the crime of being born female and caused her to have gender dysphoria issues. So this girl grew up to be this demented Mad Bomber 2.0, modeling her entire life around this dead guy that her dad claimed was his greatest enemy. It's a completely wacky story. I feel like there could have been a version of this story where there was a more grounded or more realistic Mad Bomber they had went with. But no, the Mad Bomber is a 16-year-old girl with a grudge against her dad. So then the Mad Bomber girl calls up her dad on Skype, completely confesses, reveals her whole backstory, and kills him supervillain style with a third bomb that she hid in his closet. And then the police also find out that Mad Bomber Girl collaborated with the bomb-making son of the original Mad Bomber, who was like a 50-year-old man, and that's where she got the bombs. And he had more of a straightforward motivation that his dad made the bombs, and he wanted to avenge him while honoring his father by continuing his hobby of terrorist bomb making. So they never really elaborate on how the two of them met, but I still don't quite buy it. It kind of was nonsense to me. Like, so on top of that, Mad Bomber Girl is also blowing up the train because she's dying of this like unelaborated terminal illness. Like, don't even know what it is. They never said. She has like, I don't know, brain cancer or something. And the whole bullet train explosion plot is actually her just committing suicide on the most dramatic scale and stage possible. Because if she has to die, she might as well blow up a fucking train. That being said, it then ups the ante that she really just wants to die, so she tells everyone that there's a dead man switch inside of her, and if anyone just kills her, the bomb will defuse itself and they don't have to destroy the train. Because she just wants to die, and if you help her by murdering her, then she won't have to do a suicide, and the train won't blow up, and, you know, the train company won't lose the value of the train, but anyway, no one really goes for it. There's one guy who's like, why don't we go for it? And he tries to strangle her, but then he's like, you're too cute. I can't go through with it. And she like completely has this like tsundere, like, how dare you reaction to him that actually made me laugh. But anyway, back to the movie. I overall like this movie, but it becomes like a C average movie on the basis that the whole big bomber reveal was a suicide teenage girl with a vendetta and a bomb supplier begging for money and attention, and that basically ruins the film. I don't know like what it is, but that plot line for me was just too far-fetched, especially considering how common violence and suicides are in Japan. I kind of expected someone to just be like, oh, that's all, and just chuck her off the train and just make the madness stop. Like, she gets away with it in the end, and the police just like rub the crime in her face like, haha, we gotcha. And so like the lesson here is, if you're like an abused teenager abused by cops and you do crimes to hurt people, the police will abuse you even more. Or the lesson is, if you're trying to commit suicide, don't do it in a way that inconveniences others. But yeah, abused, suicidal teen girl, mad bomber. I don't know. That seems very 2025 to me, but it also just doesn't seem realistic or satisfying in a way that pays off. Like, on the one hand, there's the unexpected quality of her being the like least likely suspect, and then haha, it's her. But on the other hand, I still have heavy doubts that she really could have pulled this all off by herself, set like 3 bombs in a train and like another one at her dad's house. And like, part of me just thinks Higuchi picked her so he could like put a crazy Japanese schoolgirl on a movie poster, and, you know, schoolgirls sell movie posters. But anyway, so that was Bullet Train Explosion, and it was good enough, but now I'm like frothing at the mouth trying to find a copy of that rare original Sony Chiba version from 1975. I don't know if you guys know where it is, but if you do, leave a comment because I'm looking for it. Netflix were complete idiots to not license the original to go along with the new one, because now I really want to find the original. All right, I'm Buster Green. Someday I'll ride a bullet train, and I hope it doesn't explode. Thank you. Good night.